Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of Paranormal Axetvities with your host, Ben Axe. I appreciate you all tuning in here. I'm very excited as we have a pretty big action-packed episode here in front of us. A little bit later, I'm going to have my good friend Andy on, as she's going to tell us a couple of her ghost experiences from back in the day, so I'm very excited about that. But before we get to Andy, a few things I do want to talk about here. First of all, I just want to say thank you very much for all of your listens and support. I don't want to sound like your stereotypical whatever kissing everybody's asses for listening, but I really do appreciate it. After 4 episodes, we actually got some international listens, so that's very exciting. Big shout out to France and Ireland as they've listened in, and I really appreciate it. We're going to keep this thing growing, and I am pumped for that. So again, thanks for listening. Tell your friends, tell your family. And for those of you in France and or Ireland or anywhere else that happens to catch the show, if you have any ghost stories or paranormal experiences, please hit me up at paranormalaxepodcast@gmail.com, and that is Axe, A-X-E. Love to hear the international ghost stories just as much as the United States ghost stories. So hell yeah. All right, then moving on here, I do have a little bit of an update from the last episode, episode 4, which is where we heard the live knocking. Still not sure what that was. But, actually, I did some investigating, and I honestly don't know what that was. The knocking came from the wall that goes into our laundry room. And it was kind of crazy. Those of you who haven't listened yet, in episode 4, about 14 minutes in, I am talking about the Moonville Tunnel, actually, located in Ohio. And as I'm talking, you hear on two different times there are 3 knocks. I heard it the first time, and then I stopped talking, and then a couple of seconds later it happened again. And the wall that it came from was from our my setup is in the garage, so it's on the back wall, and that back wall leads into the laundry room. The laundry was not running, our heaters were not on. My wife was on the couch. She also heard it and thought it was something that I did. Clearly, I did not. So, don't know if it was paranormal. Don't know if it was something else, but I'm not sure what else it could have been. So, I don't know. It was pretty crazy. So in that episode, I talked about the Moonville Tunnel, and there's some exciting news about that. My buddy contacted me, and he's actually the person I went there with the first time. He was one of the people in the group that ran away from the cemetery with me, basically. But he was like, hey, we're all going back to that area this summer. You should come down and do a live show. So I'm thinking if it all works out, my plan is to, this summer, go back down to Moonville and maybe do like an on-location episode or an on-location recording and hear some Moonville stories while at Moonville. I think that could be a pretty cool thing. So stand by for that. And also, huge shout out to a podcast called Ghost in the Night, as he was kind enough to have me on his show this past Saturday. I don't think it's out quite yet, but it was a great time. We talked about some of my experiences, including the knocking on the wall from the last episode. It's a great show. I've listened to a couple of his episodes now. It's very enlightening. The show is not just about ghost stories, he likes to kind of dive into everything, and that show really does have something for everybody. Even if you don't believe in ghosts, it's a pretty good show, so I highly recommend that. It's pretty available everywhere, I believe, so it's called Ghost in the Night. So, I think that pretty much covers my introduction here, and even including the knocking on the wall, which I did not have written down, so there's that. So I really encourage you guys, though, to go back and listen to that episode, at least that little moment of time, because one thing I always wanted to do with this show was, maybe capture some kind of, excuse me, I got my headphones off my head, but always capture, something, an EVP or whatever, and it only took me 4 episodes to do that, so I was very excited about that. So go back, listen to that, and also check out the interviews with Danae, my wife, as she has a lot going on, and we kind of dove into it on episodes 2 and 3. So if you are not caught up, please do so, but you don't have to, because I'm trying to keep each episode episodic as possible. But now, with all the introductions out, I'm going to move on to the Axetivity of the week, as that's another purpose of this show, is, I feel like I have so much going on, or between my wife and I, we have so much going on here lately, especially after kind of talking the show into life, that I have enough content, or enough stuff happens every week where I can add an Axetivity of the week. And by Axetivity of the week, I just mean something that happened in my house, or something that happened to me or somebody I know every week. So as of right now, we can do that. Just moving on here, the activity this week. So we told you on a previous episode about how Danae had that feeling of like a demon or a shadow monster or whatever you want to call it. But there was a thing at the bottom of the stairs that she feel like it lunged out at her in the middle of the night. So we went ahead and saged the house. And after that, not a whole lot happened here. And that was last week sometime, or maybe a couple of weeks ago now. But so an update to that. So last week, like last Wednesday or Thursday, Danae comes home with one of her coworkers. And her coworker said that the last couple of nights she has seen in her house a similar thing. Like one, she was sitting in her kitchen and she saw like a shadow man walk across her cabinet area. And another time she saw it walk by her window to the point to where she thought somebody was walking on the sidewalk right outside her window coming to her door, where she went and looked and there's nobody there. And then not too long after that, she was sleeping and she felt it and saw it standing over her and she couldn't wake up. Kind of like sleep paralysis, but not sleep paralysis kind of thing. And so with that, we decided to go ahead and sage her house. And also a big shout out to Twitter follower Shadow Lamore, as she has taught me, or she actually taught me how to sage. I talked to her on the phone a while back and she really showed me the pointers to that. So big shout out to her. I'd recommend following her on Twitter as well. So we decided to go to, actually Danae went to this person's house and saged it for her. And then Danae called me and she was like, hey, I think I need you to do it as I can't focus on it. So I went. I didn't really feel a whole lot of stuff because, sometimes when you're told something, it's hard to say if you really feel it or if you just kind of, if that feeling was planted there, So I don't really know, but I went there and I saged the house. I don't think I did that great of a job. I think there were some factors there that we couldn't sage it the right way. And as soon as Danae and I got home, we came in, went to the counter, the same bar where the sink came on that one time. But we came in, we were talking about it, and this was probably not even 5 minutes after we got home. We walked in the house, and we're talking. And as soon as I said, yeah, I don't think I really did anything, our lights flickered. And again, I've been in this house for a year and 3 months now, a year and 4 months now, and that was the first time the lights ever flickered. So we were standing there, we were talking about how we don't think we did anything in that house, and then our lights flickered. Then we looked up, and they flickered again. And I was like, well, fuck. Now we have to sage our house, just in case, if we did do something in that house, maybe it attached to us or followed us here. So we saged our house too. Now here's where it gets weird. I will say this, I don't want to be like crazy and say everything is a paranormal thing. It was windy that day, so it's possible the wind made our lights flicker. I mean, that happens all the time, right? Granted, I've never seen it happen in this house. I've never had any issues in this house, but that kind of stuff does happen. So who knows? So like, okay, well, we're going to sage. So we started saging. And by the way, each time I sage, I have my K2 EMF meter on me. And I also have a voice recorder activated when I am saging. So I save the entire session and I can go back and listen to it and see if I do pick up any EVPs or anything like that in the recording that you can't hear with your own ears. I've saged a couple of times, and all those times I've heard nothing other than my own voice. But this time, I start saging, and this time it feels different than the few times I did it before. It's I feel more of a push, if that makes sense. If you guys understand what I'm saying there, like I feel like I was saying the words, but whatever I was talking to was kind of pushing back. I could definitely feel that. And so I kind of made sure the thing was smokier than it usually would be, and had to be more focused. And I got to the stairs. By the way, my recorder was recording this entire time. There's a red light on there showing me that it actually is recording when it's on. I went up the stairs, and as I went up the stairs, I turned the corner like towards the hallway. And as I'm trying to move forward, my bottom step keeps creaking, like somebody is like stomping their boot on it or stepping their shoe on it. Like it's not just your typical creaking of a wooden floor. It sounded like somebody stepped on it. I looked back, there was nothing there. I tried to walk forward, again, the same creak on the bottom step. I felt like somebody was just kind of messing with me or fucking with me. That they just kept trying to like walk up, and it was like this happened 3 or 4 times. That's it was just different than the other times. So I finally get past that, and then, again, while I'm still upstairs in the same hallway, I start hearing whispering. To the point, I think, like, Danae is saying something, like she's talking to the dog or doing whatever. So I yell, like, she's in the bedroom, like, hey, are you talking at all? And she's like, no. I'm like, you're not saying any words. She's like, no. Okay. So I continue to sage, and I keep hearing this same whispering. It sounds just like that. I can't make it out, but I'm hearing it. And I keep stopping, like, are you sure? Like, I need you to be quiet. Don't say any words. Don't make any noise. Don't do anything. And the dog was laying next to her, you don't make any noise. And I just kept hearing this whispering, and I couldn't, like, the saging wasn't working. In between that, the distractions of the steps and then this whispering, I was definitely getting fucked with. And so I finished the upstairs. I kind of pushed through it, and then I looked at my recorder and I stopped. I was like, okay, let's listen to this recording now, because I really want to hear it. I was going to come down here, put it on my computer and really listen to it. There was nothing there. Like, it did not save it. The thing said saved file when I went to save it, but there was nothing on it at all. I mean, there wasn't even a record of me recording anything. It just totally disappeared off the recorder. So I was pretty pissed. I was like, oh man, that probably would have been a good one. At the time, I was really, really disappointed. I could hear that whispering like I could hear anybody whisper next to me. It was unreal. So then it didn't really feel complete. So we saged again, and this time Danae was a more active participant. We recorded it without issue. There was nothing on the recordings, so I don't know. It was crazy. But that's pretty much it. That's the activity of the week. I don't know what that was. Since we saged it the second time, I felt nothing in the house. I think whatever it was, we pushed it out. Pretty good that time. If you're hearing noises now, it's probably my dog. He's running around. I left the door open for him because he was whining, so I felt bad. But yeah, so other than that, that is the activity of the week, and I'll keep you guys posted if there's anything else. Now, moving forward, it's time to bring on Andy. I'm very excited about this interview, as I've known her for a while now, and she's actually part of one of my ghost stories I have not told on the show yet, but she is one of my witnesses that proves that I'm not wrong, if that makes sense. But all right, so here it is. Here's Andy, and I hope you enjoy the interview. All right, hey, Andy, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, you are live.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. You are live on Paranormal Axetvities, episode 5, I believe.
Sweet.
So how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm living the dream. I know it's been a minute since we've actually talked in person until just about 2 minutes ago, so.
Yeah, for a long time. We haven't spoken other than, text messages for quite a while.
Yep, lots of Facebook, lots of texting. So we used to work together back in the Sears day in 2014. And not to scare you, but I did this introduction already for like 10 or 15 minutes, and my EMF meter started going off there towards the end. So if you get any spooky stuff on your end, it's because of me, so.
All right.
Tell them to screw off if there's anything. Cool. All right, so I actually kind of talked about you a minute as well, and I told them how you were actually present during one of my ghost stories I haven't told on this show yet. But remember I told you about the lady in the white gown or whatever?
Yes, and didn't you talk about that on your other podcast?
Yes, the Moose Point a while back.
The Moose Point.
Shout out. Hashtag.
Hashtag Moose Point.
But yep, I did talk about that story on that show, just not this show yet. I'll get to it. That's kind of a longer one than I haven't.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
You're part of it. You're part of the story. And whenever I tell people that, I'm like, I say how my coworker Andy was sitting next to me when I was telling it, and then the phone call came and it kind of reassured. So
creepy.
It was very creepy. But now we're here to talk about that same time period. I remember you telling me about some of your ghost stories that you had. And I think this is a good time to talk about it even more in depth. So let's hear what you got.
Well, I had personally never had any type of paranormal experience until my daughter was born. And from the beginning, we lived in a mobile home, and just like toys would kind of go off. Oh, let me go back a little bit, because my aunt, we were more like sisters because we were very close in age.
Okay.
We were really close, and she had passed away probably about 6 months before I even found out I was pregnant.
Gotcha.
And she had always told me that whenever I had a baby, she was going to quit her job and take care of the baby for me.
Aww.
So I was really, she passed away from cancer. So it was sad that, she didn't get to experience Bailey. And so from the beginning, once Bailey started, having facial expressions and smiling and things like that, she would look over my shoulder and she would smile. And I would always look behind me and I'm like, what's back there? And she would just have the funniest facial expressions over my shoulder, whether it be after a bath or us just, playing in the living room or whatever. And she had one particular toy that it's a musical toy. You pull it down and it plays music as it rises up. And it's a stuffed animal. And I would be in her room, in her nursery, and it would start playing music. And there's no way it can play music unless you pull it down.
Right.
It's like on a string. So my aunt that passed away, her daughter was visiting one day, and I was telling her all of these things that were going on. I said, and I really think it's your mom. And she said, Mom, are you here? And the music started playing on the toy.
Holy crap.
So she looked at me and I looked at her and our eyes were huge. And I was like, no way.
Wait, so I need to back up here real quick. So
Yeah.
So her daughter came there, said she felt her mom, and then that thing started playing when she called her out.
Exactly. She was
Wow.
18 when that happened, and she would come and she would come visit Bailey. And so I told her, I said, there's some funny things going on. So I told her about it, and as soon as I told her about it, she said, is that you? And it went off.
That's crazy.
Yeah, we had goosebumps for sure. Because before then, I was just be like, it's just coincidence. It just wasn't up all the way or whatever.
Right.
But then it was like on command. So it was like I couldn't say it was a coincidence at that point.
Yeah, I would agree. When something's on command like that, it's really hard to bypass as, oh, it's just what it does. Sometimes toys like that would just go off by themselves and that kind of stuff. But
right.
On demand, that's nuts.
Yeah, that was really crazy. And then so after that, it would continue, and we moved out of that place and into a rental. We rented a house in Springfield.
Okay.
And we had a babysitter that would, whenever my ex-husband and I would go out, which was just down the street, we would have this babysitter over. And we came home one day, and she said, do you guys ever hear anything or feel anything here? And, of course, I'm like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. And she said that she was watching TV and Bailey started crying, but she was just going to let Bailey cry, herself to sleep, because that's what we did.
Gotcha.
And there was an ink pen on top of the TV, and it didn't just fall off; it flipped off. This is what she told us. It flipped off onto the middle of the floor.
The pen
and so
flipped
it
off.
Kind of freaked her out a little bit. So she went and got Bailey.
That's fair.
She was like, well, maybe they don't, maybe it's someone that doesn't like.
So you think
doesn't
possibly
like her
because
crying.
So you think because Bailey was crying, the spirit flipped the pen to tell the babysitter, hey.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And so at that same house, Bailey was probably about, I think she was 2 at this point. She was in her crib. She was in bed, getting ready to go to sleep. I always had the door cracked about 2 inches so that I could hear her. I didn't want the noise from the TV to bother her, but I wanted to be able to hear her.
Gotcha.
And I could hear her in there jibber jabbering, like she was just, like just jibber jabbering like babies do, and she was laughing. And
That's
I'm
never
like,
fun.
well, that's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
So I was standing at the stove, which was the stove was in the corner of the kitchen, and from the corner of the stove I could see down the hallway. It was a short hallway, probably about 5 foot, and I could see her door. And after she started laughing the last time, the door opened all the way.
Oh, screw that noise. That would terrify me.
It wasn't just like, from like the wind. There were no windows open. The furnace was not on at that time, and it opened all the way. And I freaked out. I called my stepmom at the time because I knew my stepmom had some experiences herself. So just in her own life.
Gotcha.
So I knew that was something that I could speak to her about, and she wouldn't be like, "You're crazy," or she just kind of talked me down, and she said, "Do you need me to come over?" I was like, "No, I think I'm okay because I think I know who it is." So I wasn't afraid, but it was kind of creepy.
Right. What time of day was that again?
Oh, it was nighttime.
Right.
She was in bed. It was nighttime. And I was making a pizza in the oven. And my ex-husband at the time was at work because he worked nights. So it was just me and her there by ourselves.
Gotcha. Yeah, that'd be pretty terrifying.
Yeah, it was really freaky because it wasn't something that door didn't move really easily.
Right.
So I knew exactly when it happened. It freaked me out. I couldn't explain it away.
I think the fact that you knew who probably helps. It sounds like Bailey has her own little protector.
Yes, definitely. It wasn't something like I didn't feel like there was any kind of, it wasn't mean. It wasn't there to harm. I think that it was my aunt protecting her.
No, fair enough. Now the question, quick question is, if the door slammed shut rather than was pushed open, would that be more scarier?
Yes, definitely.
I think the slamming shut door would be like, wait a minute, holy crap.
Yeah.
All right, crazy.
Yeah, and we always kept it cracked, but it wasn't ever it wouldn't just swing all the way open. It was totally open. And
right.
It was, the door swung in. So, yeah.
I gotcha. That's crazy.
Just really weird.
That is weird.
Yeah, it is. While we lived at that house, my grandmother passed away, and we ended up buying her house. And there was just a lot of, Bailey would be just talking in her room and then stop. Like she was having a conversation. She would stop talking and then answer a question.
So that was having a conversation by herself, you mean?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Like you're talking to your imaginary friend or whatever is what I told myself. But she would actually answer questions.
Yes, and I've seen that with my ex-girlfriend's kid. That one time was the same thing, and that's just you can't really explain it until you see it, and it's like they
right.
are like talking to themselves.
Right.
It's unreal.
Exactly. That same babysitter that we had when we rented the house was babysitting for us there one night, and she called us and she said, "Hey, you guys, everything's okay, but could you please come home?" And we're like, are you sure everything's okay? She said, "Everything's fine. Bailey's fine. But could you please come home?" And I said, "Sure." So, we went home, and she said, "I love you guys to death, and I will babysit during the day anytime you want, but I will never babysit at night again."
Wow.
And we tried to get her to tell us what happened. And finally she said that the stereo kept turning on by itself. And my ex-husband always had it on country music. And when it would come on, it wouldn't be on country music. It would be on this easy listening kind of old people music, basically.
Gotcha.
And so, Yeah, so that was kind of creepy.
Well, now, was the kind of music that was playing the kind of music that your aunt would listen to?
It was totally different music. Like, we always had it on. It was 99.1 was the country station in Springfield.
I still listen to that station.
Yeah, 99.1. But when she said when it played, it was like instrumental, easy listening music.
Nice, and that's something that she would listen to when she was alive, right?
Exactly.
Huh. That's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's not something that Lindsay would have listened to. She wouldn't have changed the station to that.
Right.
And it's not something that we listened to, but she said it happened 3 times that night. And so, yeah, she was like, I can't. She said, I'm terrified to come in this house. She said, I know it's probably not anything that's mean or evil. She says, but it's just too much.
Yeah, fair enough.
So we lost a babysitter over it.
That's actually pretty awesome. It kind of validates it even more, I think, because it's not just something that you're noticing, or there's actually another person who's not involved in that family that's also experiencing it, and probably even more to a point, because if your aunt is there watching Bailey, she's probably trying to protect her, and so she's going to be more active when you're not there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does make sense, especially, this is a stranger to her. Right. It wasn't a stranger to Bailey, and it wasn't a stranger to us, but it was a stranger to whoever. If it was my aunt or my grandmother, I don't know. I happen to think it was my grandmother at that house, because, first of all, she passed away in that house, and that was her home for 50 years.
Oh, I gotcha. So the music would have been your grandmother.
Yeah, I think that the second one, I think, was my grandmother. I don't know for a fact.
Sure.
But that Bailey does know what my grandmother was wearing when she died.
And that's pretty crazy. Like, I mean, not to get too personal, but how old were you when your grandmother died?
I was an adult. Bailey was 3 when my grandmother died.
Okay, so that's like before memory kicks in.
Right, she passed away in the house that we rented, or not in the house, but while we lived in the house that we were renting, where the other stuff happened. My grandmother passed away, and we left that rental and moved into her home. We bought her home. So, but she had told me that she knew that my grandma had a pink nightgown on when she passed away, and there's no way. She was 3 years old when my grandma passed away. There's no way she knew that.
Right.
So that was, I feel pretty strongly that the spirit that was in the house, my grandmother's house, was my grandmother.
That's pretty awesome. So it sounds like Bailey probably is pretty sensitive to the other side, and definitely has a couple of protectors hanging out with her then.
Right, and like I said, nothing happened. I didn't have any experience at all before she was born. So I really think that she's a little sensitive to things like that.
Right. That's pretty crazy. Do you have any other additional stories for us?
No, that's it. That's pretty much, I mean, once we moved out of my grandmother's house, there wasn't anything, like there would be knocks, and you could hear people walking, or you could hear someone walking upstairs. They were all wood floors, and it was really old house.
Gotcha.
So, you could kind of maybe chalk that up to, the boards settling or whatever, but Absolutely. It sure did sound like people walking.
I mean, you can definitely tell a difference, too. Like, I grew up in a house with wooden floors, and the house I live in now had wooden floors. And actually, I told a little story before I called you, and it involved the wooden floor. And you can tell a difference between just the regular creaks or the house settling to, like, walking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when it sounds like someone's shoes hitting the wood planks, that's pretty distinctive, I think.
Absolutely it is. And one thing, too, I'm trying to do with this show, and on top of hearing the ghost stories, because obviously that's the good stuff, that's what's juicy, but I'm also trying to investigate, like, what causes a ghost, if that makes sense, and why they're there. Now, in this case, it sounds pretty straightforward, like we already said. They're just here to guard Bailey, possibly?
Yes, that's what I always thought. That was my opinion, that they were just watching over her. They were loved ones, people that loved her, and they were just watching over her.
Well, that's good. That's definitely better than the scary stuff to where it's the babysitter is leaving and you guys should also leave, that kind of stuff. At least it's
Yeah,
a family
there was
protector.
nothing like there. It just didn't feel bad. It didn't feel like something nefarious or anything like that. It just seemed, I don't know, light. It just seemed light.
Well, that's good, and that's another thing you can really tell that too. Like I've been in houses where it's not been light, and then I've also been in situations where it has been light. So the fact that you can tell a difference is also really good. And
Yeah.
I mean, I would trust my gut on that than any other thing. Like there's like spirit boxes and EMF readers and all that kind of crap. But at the end of the day, I feel like your gut can tell you if it's light or dark, and so hell yeah.
Oh, definitely. Your gut tells you. Your gut can tell you a lot. If you're in a empty parking garage and you're walking around and you get a gut feeling, you should pay attention to that. I totally believe that 100%, that you should definitely listen to your gut and sit in situations like that.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I think us working loss prevention together, we really got to trust our gut sometimes. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. You had to.
Oh yeah, especially in Springfield where they have like hammers and stuff on them. You never know.
Yeah, and the addicts and things like that that would come in, and you had to not only trust your gut on, hey, did they really steal that, or did they put it down? If we didn't see, we couldn't stop them. If we didn't follow the rules, but also if they're dangerous, because nowadays that's one of the reasons I got out of that.
Oh, absolutely. Yep,
screw that.
I'm with you. I really stopped caring. I got to a point to where I was dealing with some people at like Burlington. I'm like, you know what? This isn't for me. Like,
oh yeah.
So another quick question here for you. So
sure.
All of that stuff happened when she was younger. Now she's a little bit older now.
Yes, she's 18 now.
Oh, she's 12. Don't get it twisted.
She'll always be 12 to you.
When I met you, she was 12, so she's 12.
Yes.
But so she's an adult now, technically. So do you still have any like paranormal activities at your house currently? Like, have you seen anything, or is that pretty much gone since she's become older?
I think it's pretty much gone. And she doesn't come to me with things anymore that she used to, which is a whole nother story. But she doesn't even mention anything anymore. So I think it's pretty much, I think for the longest time she was very sensitive to things, but I think it's pretty much gone now.
Oh, yeah. And they say that too. I mean, I listened to another podcast called Haunted AF. It's really good. I recommend it if you get bored. But a lot of those stories involve kids, and it's kind of the same thing. When they get older, they stop. So, like, possibly when they're younger, they're more sensitive to the other side, and then as they get older and their brains develop, it kind of pushes it away. Possibly.
Right.
That's a theory,
Well, as we age, we get cynical and jaded.
That's true. Absolutely.
We're not as pure-hearted as we once were.
That's a good point. The booze will get you. So, but that's fair. Alrighty. Well, I think if that's all we got, we can go ahead and wrap it up.
All right. Well, thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being on. And do you want to give out your Twitter handle or anything like that for followers, or are you good?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, thank you very much for being on, and I will probably text you probably daily as we've been doing. So.
All right, sweet. Let me know.
See you later.
All right, bye.
Ooh, those are some especially creepy stories from Andy there. I appreciate you being on, Andy. And one thing we forgot to do while you were on is plug your stuff. Andy hosts a Keto Buckeye YouTube channel and Facebook page. So go to YouTube and Facebook, type in the Keto Buckeye, and also check the description of this episode as they will be planted there. And one thing I learned from that is don't mess with your kids because they have protectors. So if anybody else has any stories similar to that, let me know. I do like to also hear the same type of stories from other people because you never know. I mean, if it's happening to somebody, it's probably happening to other people as well. So that's going to go ahead and wrap up episode 5 of Paranormal Axetvities. Find us on, I don't even know where I'm at these days. Apple, Google, Stitcher, TuneIn, basically wherever you get your podcasts. Tell your friends. I mean, pretty available no matter what kind of phone you have or whatever you use for your podcast and streaming music and all that good stuff. Follow me on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter at Axetvities. That's AXE-tivities. Also, follow Andy at the Keto Buckeye on YouTube and Facebook. Also, be sure to check out the Ghost in the Night podcast, as I've been a special guest, and it's a great show. And I think that's going to go ahead and be it. So, hope you enjoyed it, and let's keep learning together.